Deidre Carroll joins us now live from Irish Distillers. She's the blender there. Marty, what a guest we have today.
It's an absolute pleasure for me to have Deirdre on here again because I met Deirdre when I was doing the Irish Whiskey Academy course. Um, I was just starting out doing stuff in whiskey, and I'd sort of done stuff before, and I went down to Middleton. You're always a little bit apprehensive of these things because when you go in, people are going to come in and start quizzing you, but you sort of you don't know what they expect. In walked this young girl who was very intelligent, very easy to talk to, etc., etc. Normally with whiskey, you're expecting some old guy whose grandfather was the cooper and so on and so forth. And it was just a total change from what I was expecting. And she came in and she was chatty and very knowledgeable, and it made the whole thing much, much better. And it's a pleasure to have her here today. Deirdre, thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, Marty. What an introduction. It's good to see you again, a little bit different this time. And Justin, thanks for having me. I feel like I know you already from looking at all of the Instagram lives since October.
Lovely stuff. Actually, we've just qualified for LinkedIn Live as well, so we'll be plaguing you on another platform.
On another platform. Great. I look forward to it.
This is a big event for Justin. He was telling me all about it. He always forgets I'm not that interested. To be honest, he gets very excited. I'm not that bothered. I'm much more excited in whiskey. Now, for anyone who doesn't know or hasn't read the news about the whiskey news and so on, although we did put it on the show, Deirdre has got a promotion. She's now a blender down in Middleton, down for Irish Distillers. So, Deirdre, how did it come about? What's your background? Tell us your background.
So I hold a degree in food science and technology from University College Cork. I also studied with the Institute of Brewing and Distilling and have a diploma in distillation. And I joined the Jemison Engineering Program in 2012. I got a great foundation about the whiskey making process here. I then became a process technologist.
So basically what you're saying is, Deirdre, you're as much a scientist as you are an artisan if you're a food technologist.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So when I was a process technologist, I spent a lot of time with the wider team commissioning the pot stills, but also the column stills. And then for the last 4 years, I've worked predominantly with Kevin O'Gorman on in maturation. So myself and a wider team of 61 people, we manage 1.7 million casks. So we oversee the filling and the emptying of these casks. And then, as you mentioned, I newly appointed blender. So looking forward to getting stuck into that.
61 people divided by that many million is it would take you a lifetime to count them even.
I know.
Justin, I do it on a smaller scale. I don't bother with the filling, but I empty the bottles. So I'm a bit very much an amateur at this. Very much an amateur. Now that you're a blender, what's an ordinary day? What does a blender do for people that wouldn't be au fait with what a blender does, and how do you go about it?
So I still have my feet in both camps at the moment. I'm training in Brona, who's replacing me, but trying to get as much knowledge from Billy Lighton, the master blender, and Dave McCabe, a blender also here in Irish Distillers. But as you can imagine, a lot of the blender's role will be to do with sensory analysis. So from a quality control point of view, we are nosing casks. So any of the new distillates or any of the new cask types, we're seeing how the liquid is maturing over the years. But then for production, sensory analysis would be the brands that we know, like Redbreast or the spot range. We're trying to make them consistent. So we're looking at age profile, cask profile, and we're just making sure that the brands that you know and love, we're getting them batch on batch. So a lot of it is to do with stock management. As you can see, we have 1.7 million casks, so your nose will be tired at the end of the day.
So I assume there's a lot of Excel spreadsheet involved in the whole process as well.
Yeah,
just to try and manage all of that. Now,
yeah,
I'm going to take a whiskey here,
right.
and you talk me through a nosing from a blender's perspective, because it's different when you're doing a whiskey review as a sort of end user, but as a blender, it must be a different process. So I don't have Glencairn, I have a Capita glass, because I know you all use Capita glasses.
Yes.
I'm
interested to see what you're going to pick.
I'm going to pick Redbreast 12 cask strength, because it's
lovely.
Okay. So I will put in a little drop, and handily enough, we have some water. Okay.
Water, yeah. I was about to say, with cask strength,
now
the addition of water.
I have to just check to see what that says. 57.2%. Okay, so
57.2.
So as a blender, I think that's probably a fairly standard measure. Maybe a little bit short. So how do I do this now from a blender's perspective?
From a blender's point of view, so what we'll do is we'll send a sample request to one of our trusty colleagues in the warehousing department, and they're going to come with the different components that will be brought into the likes of Redbreast 12. So that will be like a sherry cask, a first fill sherry cask with one of our distillates here, and then what we'll do is we'll nose them to make sure that they are consistent. And a sherry cask, typically we're going to be getting nutty notes, really rich sultana notes. So we're, from a blender's point of view, we're looking at all the different components. And then what we'll do is we'll make up a composite here. So the likes of Redbreast, we'll make up a composite of the different percentages of the different types of casks, and then we'll nose that. And often what I do is I do a really slow inhale, and because you're often met with notes at the start and then notes at the end. So for this, we're looking for that typical Christmas cake. So you're looking for nuttiness, looking for sultanas, raisins, and it's quite fruity from the pot still. As well.
That nice little spice, for Christmas cakey type spice coming off it as well. Is it for anyone who doesn't know what a pot still is? Because we get plenty of viewers from all across in Canada and America and stuff, and lots of them don't actually. We keep plugging pot still, but we just have to keep reminding pot stills. The mash bill is malted and unmalted barley. When the unmalted barley gives it that little bit of spice, so it's a PGA product to Ireland. So,
and it also gives this creaminess, this mouth coating texture to the whiskey. So once you taste it, it's almost this mouth puckering, lovely mouth coating texture to the whiskey as well. Yeah.
So now you've got a cask strength in the glass. What do you do now as a blender?
So as a blender, with exactly that composite sample that I was talking about earlier, it would be cask strength. And what we find when nosing a whiskey, by adding water, you're bringing down the alcohol content. So did you say that was in its high 50s? So by bringing down the alcohol content, you're allowing the natural aromas, but also water binds to the alcohol, so it opens it up, and the flavor components can often change, which I'm always amazed at. Only the tiniest drop of water will completely open up and change the palate. So I think when you add the water to this particular one, I don't have it in front of me, I'm a bit jealous now, but it makes it a lot more fruity.
And what would you take the ABV down to?
For blending, we typically bring it down to, we cut it half and half. So you can just add the same amount volume of water, but for new distillates coming from the plant, we would bring it down to 20%.
So I'll put in a lot of water into this. What would be considered a lot of water? So I'll put in, say, 4 teaspoons, and that'll take it
Yes,
down.
yeah,
That would be.
but for tasting this, you'd be probably bringing it down to its high 40s.
Yeah.
But for blending purposes, we're bringing it a tiny bit lower to see if there's anything that we don't want.
So once you start putting in the water, you're really looking for off notes rather than. Are you looking for off notes rather than the constituent parts of what would be going in the bottle? Is that what I'm getting?
Correct. We're looking for anything, that undesirable, but also for the likes of Redbreast, we're trying to keep it consistent. So what might be desirable in another whiskey, we're trying to keep it very consistent with what Redbreast 12 is for the consumers.
Yeah. So do you have a score sheet? Do you have tick, tick, tick? This is this. Is it predetermined, or what way does that work? Do you write down how many different flavors do you get from a nosing as a blender?
So as I said, we're looking at it in the composite, in the constituents. So all the different ingredients, we've separated them out in the different cask types, and we're nosing these casks singularly. So it depends on if we're looking at an ex-bourbon barrel that will go into Redbreast, or if we're looking at a sherry, we're looking at them individually, and then at the end we're making sure you're comparing it to a Redbreast cask strength that you'd have as a sample.
Mm-hmm. Now, I've done the nosing. I've no off notes because I'm actually just about to taste this. This is where I'm going with this. So now,
you feel a bit hard done by, Justin, that we don't have.
He does this all the time to me. He gets sent the samples, and I don't get sent any. And I'm sitting here going, "What am I going to do? What am I going to do?" He does this every week, nearly.
I'll just say I bought all of this. By the way, Justin, I didn't get sent any of this. Now I've done the nosing.
Mm-hmm.
Now do I taste? Now can we take a taste?
Of course, yeah. Okay. We wouldn't deny you that.
That is wonderful. Now that's really good.
Yeah, now, it really reminds me of Christmas. I suppose it's my dad's favorite, so I dare not go home at Christmas without a bottle of it.
I can imagine you got requests for lots of this. Oh, yes. Tell me this. Any chance you could get me a bottle of X, Y, and Z? Do you know?
Yeah.
So now you've tasted it.
Mm-hmm.
Again, is it the same process? Is it the same? You're checking for off notes maybe more than what you're expecting. What way does that work?
Yeah, again, so you're checking for off notes. You're checking, and again, it's just coming back to the flavor components that you expect out of a Redbreast, 12-year-old. And as you can imagine, we're using natural products. We're using casks, that vary, from year to year, from different wood types. So you're making sure that the product is consistent, and then the correct percentages of those. But yeah, I think it's a combination of you're looking for off notes, but you're also just trying to keep it consistent. So yeah. With the Redbreast that we know and love.
Yeah. So once you have your data, the data that you expect everything to be, and checked it for off notes and done that, then you take it, enter into Excel, I assume, and that's you'll go for your cask. You'll go for tick, tick, tick. That's it. Mm-hmm. Do you give it a score? Do you mark down? Is there? What way do you do it for that?
We don't give it a score. It's good. It's consistent, and it's ready to be bottled. So then, when it comes in its recipe, let's say, to where it's being disgorged or dumped, as we call it, we have our own language. We bring it to the warehouse, and then it goes through. So as a blender, we'll pass it, but then it will go through into a big vat. And there again, we have a sensory panel on site. And what they'll do is they'll nose it again for off notes. So it's nosed twice when it's put into a vat and mixed all together. And then afterwards, before it's put into a tanker to go to Waterford to be bottled, it's actually nosed 3 additional times from our tasting panel, just to make sure that nothing was picked up during the process.
Have you actually ever blended something and then had to pour the whole thing down the drain? Does that happen? Bound to happen.
No, it hasn't happened yet, thankfully. I think with our noses and the noses that have gone before us, we have noted before it gets to that stage, thankfully. And you can often reject a cask prior to getting to that point, you know. I think one of our biggest things is, because Irish whiskey, let's say if we have a 4-year-old whiskey or a component, and you have to make sure not to add that component to an age statement product like Redbreast, or because that's 12-year-old, it automatically becomes 3 years old. So you have to be very careful when you're, you know, you'd want to have your coffee that morning when you're doing blending.
Just make sure. Now, Irish Distillers have a vast range of products, okay, and getting bigger by the day. There's a new Method of Madness launched this morning. Now, what's your personal favorite? What's your what one would you? What do you reach for?
What do I reach? That's a good. I knew you were going to ask me this question, and I'm sure you have asked me this question before when we met back in 2016. It genuinely depends on the occasion. For me, as I already mentioned, you know, a Redbreast 12 cask strength at Christmas. Although my dad has started to push for getting a Redbreast 27-year-old next Christmas. So his palate has changed.
His taste has become more expensive, is what you mean?
His taste has become more expensive, exactly. But I suppose St. Patrick's Day, I opened a Yellow Spot 12-year-old. I reached for that. I don't know whether it was because it was the first St. Patrick's Day that I can remember that was sunny, and it reminded me of the Malaga cask that we use in it. Maybe I thought I was in Malaga, but it really depends on the occasion. Like a Friday afternoon after a week's work, you know, I love a Jameson Black Barrel, or I might do a Jameson Black Barrel Sour. It really depends on the occasion.
I tell people this as well. That, I mean, this Redbreast it's a nighttime whiskey. It's a sort of autumnal nighttime. You're sitting at home with the fire. Fire. That's kind of what this is for. I think Yellow Spot is the best of the Spot range, if I'm honest. I think it's the best by a margin. Is how I would consider it. So I'm glad to hear you saying that. But it's all subjective. Now, Deirdre I mentioned earlier on about the Whiskey Academy. I have my certificate here.
Your certificate?
My certificate, and actually the Academy blend.
I don't have any certificate or any gift bottle, because I know nothing about whiskey. I'm the person that Marty uses as a foil to teach people about whiskey.
You'll have to come down to us to the Academy, Justin.
That would break the entire premise of the show then, if I actually had been on a training course. Yeah.
I keep trying to tell Justin certain things about the whole stuff, and it falls on deaf ears. Much the same as whenever he gets all excited about, we've got an extra 2 listeners in Zimbabwe this week. I don't care. Anyway, but I went down to the Academy, and it's a wonderful experience, because you get to chat to a professional, someone who's actually in the trade, someone who's there in the business, and you get to really see behind the scenes and get to go to places that you just wouldn't get to on a generic tour, and get to someone like yourself who is a professional. Now, do you still teach at the Academy? Is that still going to be something you're doing?
No, as I mentioned, that was something that I was supporting in my process technologist role. So it's Tommy Byrne now who is a tutor in the academy. But during the summer we actually did a virtual academy, myself and my team, which is great to have that opportunity. Yeah.
Now, I mentioned that there was a new bottling of Method of Madness come out this morning.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for anyone who's not sure, Method of Madness is from the micro distillery down in Midland, and it's the experimental ones. Now, this one's the French chestnut. This morning it was mulberry cask. Now, do you care to elaborate a bit on that?
Oh yeah, I can't wait to elaborate on it. I must get off and try and get it after this podcast. I must get off and try and get a bottle. I was only nosing it last night. It's so interesting. I don't think I've ever tasted a whiskey like it. There's, to the nose, it's this really strong paprika,
I've read this.
smoked paprika, which is really interesting, and it's just juxtapositions really nicely with the sweetness. But I don't know if you're familiar with the mulberry tree. They're quite small, so the casks are only 50 liters.
Yeah.
So they're teeny tiny. We're not used to working with something so small on a big scale. But yeah, I think there was a lot of trial and error with Finbar and Anna and the team who sourced them from Hungary. But it's a really interesting whiskey. You must try and get your hands on it. I don't know.
Well, I've already got a bottle.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. I managed to get one.
They're not sold out by the time I try and get a bottle later.
I think they probably are, but it's all right. Justin got a bottle as well. I managed to send likely Justin to get him a bottle.
Don't you be giving the game away, Marty? Don't you be giving the game away at all? There's my bottle there. It's a virtual one.
No, I told Justin, get yourself a bottle of this because it's interesting, because this is an area of Irish whiskey that's totally different from Scotch, because in Scotland it has to be 100% oak, whereas over here we can experiment with different casks. So we have French chestnut with mulberry, acacia wood. Is there? I know you can't tell us, but is there other woods possibly being explored?
Yes.
That's okay. That's about as good as you can answer.
That's about as good as I can answer if I want to keep my job.
Yeah.
Don't do what another distiller did. They had the bottle sitting on the shelf behind us in the picture. But luckily, when they lifted it, when I pointed it out, what's that bottle? They turned it around and we couldn't see it.
It turned it around. Okay, jeepers! I better have a look behind me, see if there's anything hiding.
I don't think that would be your fault.
But yes, we're constantly experimenting. Yeah, so we have a micro distillery here. Marty, you would have seen it when you were down last. And since then, our distiller Larissa has been very busy. It's a centre dedicated for learning. Obviously, all of our graduates would learn how to distill here, and Larissa then has been experimenting with distillates such as oats and rye. Typically with pot stills in Irish Distillers, we would have used a mash bill of a pot still whiskey, which is malted and unmalted barley. So yeah, I'm really interested to see how these new distillates that come out of the micro distillery marry or mature in different types of casks that we have here.
The cask selection, I assume these days there's so many different experimental casks. Everybody's chasing around for different cask finishes, different wood styles. So all these different little parts, the different mash bills, the different cask finishes, the different cask selections, and so on. I mean, it must be, even for a company the size of Irish Distillers, it must be really, really exciting with everything that's happening all across the distilleries in Ireland.
Oh, completely. It's such an exciting time to be a part of, yes, Irish Distillers, but in distilling in general. It's as you mentioned, we it's just a time to get creative with all these different cask types, with new distillation, with new distillates, and it's great to
Surely
see.
everything's been tried now in whiskey
Yeah.
that's in the past 300 years. What hasn't been done that you're going to do?
I can't I can't answer that, Justin. With the with the likes, that's a secret.
All right.
I'm looking forward to getting very creative. Myself and the blending team, and working again with the micro distillery, and I think it's very exciting that there is a trend for premiumization. So people are drinking less, but they're drinking better quality and different types of products. So it's a very exciting time to be a part of the industry, I think.
Now, this was released, was it 2 weeks ago? From the box,
Redbreast 10-year-old, yes.
Redbreast 10-year-old cask strength. Now, I've noticed it says exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
It says limited edition,
Mm-hmm.
cask strength, batch 1. Now, they're going for the collector's market a bit here now, let's be fair. Because this is a very box ticking exercise for the collector's market. Now, it's come out, it's obviously got the new branding and new imagery on it.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm honest, I would prefer the 12-year-old. I think the 12 is better than the 10, but that's just personal preference.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the back, it says to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the rebirth of Redbreast, because it disappeared for a while and then Irish Distillers took it up again. Master blender Billy Layton and blender Dave McCabe. Now, I want to see Deirdre O'Carroll's name on one of these these days soon. That's what we're looking for. We want one of these.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Now, if you had to pick something that you would like to try or like to see or like to do yourself, what would be something that you would like to do?
It's, I have loads of ideas. I suppose I love just working primarily with the micro distillery. So trying new distillates in, we're trying some of our traditional style of whiskies in different wood types. But I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes out of the micro distillery in different wood types, and seeing how they progress as well.
Yeah. I'd love to see it. Now, I'm going to show Justin, this is Middleton Very Rare. Okay. And this is a really, really rare bottle of this. A really rare bottle of it because it's opened. These are now going for really, really high price now. I mean, the secondary market on these has just went crazy in the last little while. Now, I know the producers don't look to the secondary market, but you can't ignore that. And whenever you've got the exclusive, the Birdhouse exclusive, the limited edition printed on the box, there's obviously that element to everything too. So with the new experimentation and the new interest in collecting whiskies, interest's never really been as high, or certainly not for a long, long time. So do you have a collection of whiskies at home? Do you get into that? Because you must have access to some nice collectibles.
I do, and I would say it's only in the last year that I've started getting into collecting. But what I tend to do is I tend to buy one to keep and one to taste. Just to it's important to open these bottles and have a taste.
I would love to open them, but Marty keeps on telling me to buy them and sit on them for 10 years. I'm going to wait
only buy one
for 10 years. 10 years.
You only buy one, and I always have some. If you want to taste them, Justin, there's always ways of getting you a taste of them. Don't worry about that. We'll get you sorted. Because there's the bottle shares and all the new groups and stuff. I'm actually a fan of this, and I don't know what sort of process. That's really actually. I was pleasantly surprised by that. I thought it was an awful lot. It punches well above what I expected it to be, if I'm honest. I really, really like that.
It's really the Jameson Cold Brew.
The Jameson Cold Brew. Now, I'm really looking forward to the day that your name's on one of these bottles, because I can see it coming. I think the likes of yourself with new sort of vision and new eyes, and you're moving from the sort of science area into the blending's more of an art. You know, we sort of see it as more of an art than science, and you're moving across into that with new ideas and new eyes, and I'm really looking forward to that, what coming in the future. But I will have to just bring up a point. When I was down at Middleton and we were doing the course, you get a little bus takes you up into the warehouses, and you're like this walking in, just these thousands of barrels of whiskey, and the smell, and you get to taste the port pipes and stuff. It's amazing. But on the way back, there was bunny rabbits running about. And Deirdre, oh look, bunny rabbits, she got very, very excited by this. Now, I told her that very near where I live, you have these. These are golden hares. And they're golden. When you see them in the sun, they shine, and they've got bright blue eyes. So I thought I would show her a picture. These are on Rathlin Island, which is just round the corner from me. It's obviously an island, so it's just round the corner and a bit of a boat ride. But these are, pull it up full screen there for us, Justin.
All right, I'll pull the best picture.
The blue eyes.
Yeah,
bright blue eyes.
Look at that there. Yeah.
So
I did. Thank you for sharing with me. I did. You know, I do believe you, Marty, but I did think that they could have been photoshopped when I googled them. So I'm a scientist, I have to see everything with my own eyes to believe it.
Yeah,
that's especially because.
Have you seen one, Justin?
I actually have. I actually did the interview about 20 years ago about the March hares, and it really is a thing that they come out in March to fight, and that's why they're associated with the March and Easter and stuff like that. Although it's bunny rabbits have taken over.
They're beautiful.
They are beautiful.
They're massive. They're absolutely massive things.
They're massive.
They'll have to come up next March, so that's the best time to see them.
Yeah,
you're always more than welcome, Deirdre. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I wish you every success.
Thank you.
Well deserved. I think you're a fabulous girl. You're really, really knowledgeable, intelligent, clever in what you do. And I wish you every success. And hopefully we'll speak to you again soon.
Hopefully. Thank you. It was a lovely way to spend a Thursday afternoon.
All right. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.